You mentioned that you were very honest, and it was one of the things that really helped was when you weren't present, when you had a bad day, you were okay to say, I had a bad day. And then we could refocus and say, okay, what are we doing tomorrow to make sure that doesn't happen again? Let me ask you this about, I'll circle back to that in a second, but you mentioned the work that we did and the fact that you were able to get more present and that you got better at it. Your first half of that year was significantly better than stuff that you'd had in the previous few years. You were flying. And then we've had a great career season. Like a lot of the stuff that we work on and that you and I end up talking about and some of the basic tools are things that they don't really go away. Like you can strength train, and it's been a minute since I've been in the gym. I did a lot of it when I was a young man, but none of it's left there now. But this sort of stuff, if you learn it, would you say that some of it has stuck with you the whole way through? And also, does it start to impact other areas of your life?
For sure. It definitely impacts other areas of my life. And once again, I think this whole idea of when we're talking about the brain and mental health and stuff like that, the best way to compare it is to what you mentioned. The strength that you would gain in the gym is you either going to continue to work out and strengthen it or at least maintain it. Or if you put it to a side for a while, you're going to lose all that strength. So it's just something I've just carried on throughout my career. And it might not necessarily be me and you interacting every single day, but it's me taking a lot of the stuff and applying it to my work. Even when I'm hitting in the cage here, like, okay, I took 2 bat swings, step out of the box, get your eyes off of something, come back to the moment, step in the box, be present in the moment, focus on what you need to focus on. What part of the ball am I looking at? Challenge yourself to see the inside part of the ball, judge it between 1 and 10. How well do you see it? And then that's it. And then it's just transitioned into more just, for me, the way that I've been able to stay sharpened is I read about it a lot too. I read books about it. And I think the more that I do that, I've been able to self-maintenance myself a lot more. Not to say that I've ever gotten to a point where I would ever get away from using someone like you in my life or throughout a baseball season, but I think taking the ownership of it the same way that I've taken ownership of my body, and I don't need a strength and conditioning coach to push me to work out in the weight room. I've had to take it upon myself to make sure I'm staying sharp when it comes to things about my brain and find ways to challenge myself and use all the tools and consistently tell myself how important they are and hold myself accountable to them. Because at the end of the day, anyone in trying to get in my position, someone trying to get to the next level at whatever they're trying to do, it's all going to come back to holding yourself accountable. It's great to have my strength and conditioning coach, or it's great to have you hold me accountable for things I want to do, but we're grown men, we're grown-ups. At the end of the day, you got to hold yourself accountable. There's not going to be someone to hold your hand every step of the way. I've learned to not use you as, a
crutch. Yeah.
Not to use you as a crutch, but I use you as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And, that happened over time.
Yeah. You mentioned accountability there, and it's a really key word, particularly for anyone who's trying to achieve anything great over the long term. I can get fit in 30 days, and even that's tough. But if I'm trying to stay fit and run a triathlon by the end of the season, that's going to be really hard work, and accountability is going to be a key part to it. I gave a talk to the Stanford emergency doctors a month or two ago, right? And someone actually hit me up afterwards and sent me an email and said, hey, I'm trying to do this. He's clearly really good. He's working at one of the best hospitals on the West Coast. He's an emergency doctor. He's probably got his whole life laid out in front of him. But he's like, I just don't seem to be able to keep myself accountable. And he asked me, what tricks do you have to be able to do that? Now, I have a couple of answers, but I'm interested, given that I just mentioned before, you were very good at being honest and upfront about, I didn't do that when we were talking. And you've also said you've got to hold yourself accountable. How do you make sure that happens? Because we're all human and sometimes we're not as good at that as we might want to be.
I think it's just something I've learned over the course of my career that in some degree I work for myself. Obviously an owner, a general manager employ me of their team, but I'm only as good as I allow myself to be. I can only play this game for so long. So I have to maximize every single day of my career in order to stay in this game. So I've learned just along the way that I don't have room to not be accountable. I've just learned that the sad reality is that we are expendable, that we do have a shelf life. And if I want to play this game for as long as possible, my accountability had to start yesterday. I have to rely on myself to get everything that I want to get out of this game. And I think that maybe just goes back to just the way my parents brought me up, seeing my parents just work hard and be accountable for themselves. I think them being business owners, I think there's a kind of just a sense of accountability that you learn from watching them that they didn't have an employer telling them what to do. Everything that they've accomplished in their life is something that they built on their own. And my dad, this was a little bit later on in life, that once his business was up and running a little bit, but my dad was still working 7 days a week, but he always made time to come to our games. He never missed our games. We were always the number one priority, but he also understood that it was his business, that if he needed to work a Sunday and get up at 6 a.m. and go in and leave at 1 because me and my brother had a game at 2, that's what he had to do. That's all I ever knew. And even before that, he talked about laying hardwood floors on his hands and knees, working 7 days a week because that's what needed to be done in order to get the business running. So I think part of it is just watching my parents and watch the success they've had. And I think some of it might just be DNA. I think some of it's just inherent behavior of what I've been able to witness in my life. And also I think just some role models that I've had growing up, like professional athletes that you hear them talk about that sort of stuff and maybe you don't understand it. So you start to educate yourself on it a little bit more and then you're living it and you're like, oh, it all makes kind of sense now.